Hey there, quick disclaimer here. Hello, quick disclaimer. The music used in this video belongs to Rajman and was developed in part by for a small indie title known as Stonehearth, not to be mistaken for Hearthstone. Rajman's music is some of my absolute favorite, and I've been listening to it for quite a while. As for Stonehearth, it's a lovely little indie game that I did play some of the alpha for, and I was a good supporter of. Sadly, I wasn't able to be a full-on supporter, and I only got to get a beta key from a friend of mine when they were handed out to supporters. That being said, I welcome you to my video, and thank you for hearing out my disclaimer and understanding. And Rajman, if you're watching this, I appreciate you so very much. Thank you, and enjoy the presentation. Yo, what's going on? My name's Kowalski, and I need to give a bit of advice to the community and to anybody who can watch this video. Just straight up advice. This is what you need to know pretty much when you start playing Overwatch. If you're new to PC, okay, and maybe you just got a new gaming rig, or maybe you bought some parts, recommended, or you got some parts, okay? Excuse me. What you need to do at the very beginning is you need to, one, download a program called CPU-Z, also called CPU ID. This program is going to tell you all the information on your computer hardware. It's going to tell you what your graphics card is, or your GPU. It's going to tell you what your motherboard is. It's going to call it your main board. It's going to tell you what your memory is, which is your RAM. Okay? Those are the three major things that you're going to be looking for when getting a computer and having one. On top of all this, I'm going to tell you right now, Overwatch is a competitive game. Okay? When you play Overwatch, maybe some of you don't care about it being super competitive, but if you are trying to compete, the following information is going to be for you. 1. Overwatch is best optimized when at your resolution of your monitor and your refresh rate. You're going to see this here. See this? This defines the hertz rating. That is that's the power of your monitor. That is the amount of FPS you're going to get, basically, compared to what you're actually going to see. Okay. Secondly, you need to try to run at your refresh rate here. Okay? You want to set it to custom. Do not let anyone tell you to overclock your frame rate. Don't let them tell you to cap it at 300 to uncap your frames, because what this does is it overworks your system and you're not getting any added benefit. There is a myth and truth to more frames. The more frames you have is good, but if your monitor is not a 300 hertz monitor, which, by the way, they don't exist yet. They don't exist. There's 240. That's it. And even then, people who run 240 need the absolute best computers you can get to run 240. So you better be paying out $3,000 plus on a fine-tuned computer and be ready to play competitive. So don't worry about all that FPS, okay? So set that to your refresh rate, or you can set it to display-based, okay? Those are some major stipulations. Make sure you're full screen. Don't run the game borderless. Don't run a window. I don't care if you think borderless is easy to tap things in. Okay? Once you've done all that, your render scale, set that to 75%. I know it looks pretty at 100%, okay? See? Looks a little smoother, looks a little shinier, right? You can see things in greater detail. Yeah, well, the game doesn't run as good, okay? So just set it to 75. It's not the worst thing in the world. See? It's pretty much no different. I mean, at longer distances, things are kind of fuzzy, but it's whatever, okay? Okay. I'm gonna go back here. Now, what you need to do is set all your shit to low. Alright? Ambient occlusion, local reflections, you don't need to know what that means other than it requires a lot of horsepower from your computer. Your graphics card and your processor have to work together. Okay? Your processor is like the brain. Your processor is your brain for your computer. The graphics card is basically the muscle. Okay? The power supply also matters, but not as much. And the motherboard is basically everything else, okay? Think of the motherboard as all your veins, all your inner workings and stuff, your body. Your brain, CPU, processor, and GPU is all your muscles, okay? It's your eyes and shit. The CPU has to process things, why it's called a processor. So it's got to think of all this stuff going on. And you might think, well, my game runs fine at 60 frames. Okay, I don't have the most amazing PC in the world. There are visual representations too. Okay, there are ways to tell. There are ways to tell, and it's not the easiest thing to represent because you have to see it on the monitor. Like I said, the thing matters about your monitor. If you don't have a 240 Hz monitor, capping your frames at 240 to 300 FPS is doing nothing for you. I just want to get that out of the way, just so you understand. Your monitor matters just as much, okay? So, overall, you want your settings on low. I mean, for most people, if your PC's not 6+ years old, you can turn your textures on high if you want. But I just, because I want to be safe, I want as much performance as possible no matter what, especially since the game is always being updated. You never know if maybe a texture is going to be rendered differently. You never know if this one texture is going to be seen on screen more often. I don't need Genji's Dragon Blade to be any more pixelated than I already need it to be. Like, it doesn't... I just need to see the color and the outline of it. That's the point, okay? You know? But just to reiterate, your game needs to be optimized if you want to play it at all competitively and have it smooth. You have a little thing called input latency, which also matters to your mouse and your monitor's resolution. Your input latency basically means that if you're going to input something, you want it to translate to your hand. So I'm going to go on one end of my mouse pad here, and I'm going to bring it over here, all the way around, okay? That's a 360-degree turn, okay? That's a little more than half my mouse mat because I got a big mouse pad, okay? I'm going to bring it back around. Same spot on my mouse pad, right? You would think I could do it over. And over. And over. And over. Okay? You get it? Now, if I had input latency, the input latency would drag it, so instead, it would be something confusing like if I did this. I'm going to flick my DPI switch on my mouse, which turns up my mouse sensitivity, basically, and then I'm going to flick it back off. So now, if I were to go back here, my mouse is in a different spot on my mouse pad, okay? You can't see this, but basically it's in the same spot. It's gonna be different, alright? That's basically how input latency might work, except instead it's a progressive thing where as you move your mouse, it kind of drags and it lags behind. So it's really unfortunate. Input latency really sucks, and it sucks that you have to deal with it if you do. So to minimize input latency, what you need to do is you need to make sure you have a mouse plugged into the back of your motherboard, make sure your keyboard is plugged in to the back of your motherboard, which is in the back of the computer, okay? And that's gonna be where you're gonna want to plug this stuff in. Do you need your stuff plugged into USB 2.0 or 3.0? Usually, USB 3.0 will be different colored. It'll be blue or red instead of standard black. USB 2.0 will generally be a black little piece of plastic inside the USB port. I'm sure you're well aware of what a USB port looks like. It's no different than on your charger. It's no different than anything else you've ever seen before, if you're really that little piece. I'm thinking you're dumb, but I know some people that they look at the back of a computer and they don't know what they're doing. And that's fine. There's obviously a piece of hardware you've never used before, extensively. So that's fine. Just make sure you got your shit plugged into where it needs to be. Make sure you have things running. Here is another important thing that you might want to do. Whenever you get a computer, you're going to want to update your drivers and your BIOS and stuff. What are your BIOS? Your BIOS are a menu that are internally in your motherboard. Basically, when you start up a computer or you restart it, it's going to ask you to press F2 or delete on your keyboard. If you look above your arrow keys on the right-hand side of your keyboard, you have the delete key right there. Right there on the bottom row, those 6 buttons right above it, okay? And on the top left of your keyboard, obviously the F1, 2, 3, 4, so on, you have F2. What you want to do when you start up your computer is you want to rapidly tap either one of these keys, just so, because when your PC starts up, you only need to press it once, but you gotta be quick on the draw. So just keep tapping it. That's what everybody does. Just keep pressing it until it works. Because sometimes you gotta wait for Windows to start up and then you miss it, and it's frustrating because you gotta wait for Windows. When you get a brand new computer, make sure, as much as you can, your peripherals are plugged into the back of your computer. Make sure you download CPU-Z or CPU-ID. And then once you use this program, you can check on all your stuff. You're going to look for the names of the manufacturers. It's not complicated, it has everything labeled. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to the manufacturer website with your model number. You're going to download all the files for your BIOS. Okay, you're going to download your files for your drivers, your BIOS, everything you need. I highly recommend that you get yourself a USB flash drive of some kind. The reason you're going to do this is because you need to plug that in to your computer, preferably in the back of your motherboard. Yes, you can unplug your headset or your microphone if you bought a standalone microphone that is USB related. You don't need anything other than your mouse, keyboard, and that USB drive plugged into the back of your computer. Yes, all computers, if you're wondering before you even buy one, will have a minimum of 4 USB ports in the back. 2 being USB 3.0 on all systems that aren't 10 years old, and 2 USB 2.0s, or 2.1, if it's a more advanced motherboard. Okay? After you do this, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your advanced settings in your BIOS. Really easy, use your arrow keys for it, or use your mouse, but the mouse is going to have input latency if it's got old BIOS, okay? It's nothing that's going to hurt you, it's just going to be hard to move your mouse around, and it's going to shake and stuff, and it's going to be really annoying, okay? So, when you're in your BIOS, go to Advanced, go to Tools, and look for something that's going to reference memory or drives, right? Or update, okay? It'll probably be the first thing in your tool section under Advanced. It's going to ask you either if you want to search the internet for the BIOS update or any files, or you're going to go to your USB device, right? It'll be on your computer. So you find your USB device, and don't worry about selecting different ones. Use your arrow keys, select different ones, and look for the name of the file of your BIOS. Okay? And once you do that, you're going to check your BIOS file. You're going to have it read the file. It's going to detect whether or not the BIOS are compatible, and hopefully you got the right version, and it will say, these BIOS are compatible. Start the installation. So then you let it do its thing, install, and it's going to restart your computer. Don't freak out. Often, when you introduce your motherboard to new things, like a new processor, a new operating system like Windows 7 to Windows 10 when upgrading, or anything new, hardware even, with a GPU, a graphics card, normally it will not turn on properly. You're going to have to hit your reset switch or hold down your power button to power it off, turn it on again. Sometimes your fans will not calibrate correctly, so don't freak out either. It'll ask you to press F1. You just go into your settings, you do your startup management and stuff, you let it do its thing, and then once you're all set and ready to go, and you have your BIOS all updated, you just launch again, save and exit, and launch your Windows. And then you're going to come back to other things, like checking your drivers for your graphics card, checking your Windows drivers, making sure everything's all updated. And it's not complicated. It's not complicated. Just go to the manufacturer website, know what your stuff is, and just keep it on paper. Keep it on a sheet of paper, keep it on a text file on your computer, and it'll be A-okay. Alright? That being said, let's get back to Overwatch, and assuming that you've updated your BIOS, assuming that you have all your stuff calibrated, assuming that you know what you're doing at this point, you have everything up to date, your files are up to date, your drivers are up to date, your mouse, keyboard, all that stuff, you checked all devices on your computer and their manufacturer websites for all the latest stuff involving your mouse, you know, your clickers and stuff, your keyboard, whatever. Okay? You're ready to start gaming. What can I recommend to you for Overwatch now? What can I tell you that you need to do hands down? This is a competitive game. This game is competitive. If you're wanting to play competitive, the first thing you want to do in any situation, turn down your settings as low as you can stomach, which should be down to these. 75 render scale, everything as low as possible. Don't worry about the exact things, don't worry about the details on them. Just see all these things? See all these things right here? Turn them down. Turn them down. Doesn't matter. You don't have to stress it. You don't have to keep looking at this. You don't need to screenshot my video. Turn it down. You can do this. It's not complicated. It's not complicated. Stop stop writing that you want a more detailed explanation. It's not hard. 1920 by 1080p. Everybody's got a 1080p monitor, barring a few random people who have potato monitors. Play at your refresh rate. Don't overcap your frames. It's stupid. You're not going to get any benefit from it. It does nothing for you. Okay? Controls. Is there an ideal mouse sensitivity? Technically, yes. There are really slow mouse sensitivities. Some people say you want a low sensitivity, so you go down really slow, but then you gotta drag your arm more than a foot across your mouse pad and see how hard this is. I'm lifting up my mouse over and over, because that's really hard to aim. Look how slow that is, right? Obviously it looks alien to me, so let's turn this back up. Bam. Bam. Wow. Wow. Because I'm used to it, okay? Good. Now that I've made that point, okay? Let's make sure you understand a couple other things. What you need to do is you need to look for mouse sizes. You need to look at your hands and think about how big your hand is and how that mouse is going to fit in your hand. There's a really cool guy named Rocket Jump Ninja. That's his alias online. He's been playing FPS games for 20 plus years now, and he recommends all sorts of mice. He has a top 40 list that he made as of last year, and it's an excellent list. You can find tons of good mice. He gives you a guide on measuring your hand's width from the palm of your hand, the base of your hand, to the fingertips at the very end of your hand, and it helps you figure out what mice you should look at, what mouse you need. And all the sensors are really, really good. If anyone tells you that you need really high DPI, no you don't. In fact, really high DPI is bad because it causes problems. I use 400 DPI. That's really low. That is the lowest you can go in terms of DPI. Some people like 400, some people like 800, some people like 1600, which is the highest you should be going. And DPI does matter to your monitor, okay? If you're running a monitor that is 1080p, HD, okay, you're gonna want anywhere between 400 and 1600 DPI. In game, in Overwatch, what are you gonna do? The easiest thing you can do is look at the mouse space that you have. Look at the space that you have for your mouse mat. If at all possible, choose a friendly DPI that you like between 400 and 1600. Whatever works better for you. And then try different sensitivities in game. And choose one that allows you enough mobility to where you can still aim, right? But you can also move around your mouse mat without having to stop before you do a 360-degree turn. Okay? Because you need to be able to have mobility. In this game, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of people flying around, a lot of shit going back and forth, and a lot of things to think about. So having really slow sensitivity is not good, because then you're dragging around, and you're wasting your time, and there's a Genji behind you, and there's that guy there, and there's that guy there. Like, any of these could be players just around you, in every direction. It's crazy. So, yeah. Obviously, matches are going to go differently in this, as a practice range, but you get the idea. Okay? But my main concern is that if you want your game to perform to any kind of standard that is good, do the following. Update your system. Drivers, BIOS, firmware, all of it. Software, all of it. Make sure it's all up to date. Optimize your game. Optimize your graphics card settings. There's an easy way to fix that. I can't show you because my game is in full screen and I would need to re-record. So actually, I might as well show you now. I'm just going to splice the recordings together after this and show you. Okay, here we go. So, welcome back. Welcome to your NVIDIA drivers, okay? Or rather, your control panel. See this? This is your NVIDIA control panel. All you have to do is right-click on your desktop if you have an NVIDIA GPU. You could have an AMD, which those work differently, but you can look up a guide for that. I can't show you because I don't have an AMD GPU. I'm sorry. Okay. So, NVIDIA control panel, you open this up, and here you have your image quality settings. You can set a preference for this, for quality or performance. Generally, you want performance. Here, you have managed 3D settings. In here, these are your global settings. Okay? Basically, if you've already done this or tried to set up your game for all this stuff, then you already know what's going on, but you're going to show you. All these things you want to kind of set to off, and yes, this is a very particular listing, so I'll take my time with it and show you. And for those of you who are trying to listen and do this on your phone or on a YouTube video, I'll announce everything for you. Ambient occlusion, we're going down the list of all the things that start with A. Ambient occlusion, off. Anti-stropic filtering, off. Anti-aliasing, FXAA, off. Anti-aliasing gamma correction, on. Anti-aliasing mode, off. Anti-aliasing setting, it won't be there, it's grayed out. Anti-aliasing transparency, it's also grayed out. We're moving on to the C's now, we're going to go down the list. CUDA GPUs, all. DSR factors, off. DSR smoothness, off. You can't touch it. Maximum pre-rendered frames, important setting, set that to 1. Monitor technology, fixed refresh rate. This is if you have a chip inside your monitor, you might not see this. Who cares? Multi-frame sample to AA, MFAA, off. OpenGL rendering GPU, auto-select. Optimize for compute performance, off. Power management mode, important. Prefer maximum performance. Preferred refresh rate, application controlled. Maybe you don't have this option, it's okay. Shader cache, on. Texture filtering, anti-stropic sample option, on. Optimization. Texture filtering, negative load bias, allow. Texture filtering quality, high performance. Texture filtering trilinear optimization, leave that on. Threaded optimization, turn that shit off right now. I don't know why mine's on either. Triple buffering, leave that shit off forever. Vertical sync, never touch it. You don't need it, you don't want it, it's evil. Virtual reality for 100 frames, whatever, who cares? Leave it on 1, it doesn't matter. Leave it on 1. Okay, you just learned how to optimize your BIOS. All of it, it's good. Global setting, it's great, it's okay. Change resolution. In here, if you are running a high refresh rate monitor, if your monitor is a 120 Hz, a 100 Hz, a 85 Hz, a 75 Hz, a 144 Hz, anything above 60 Hz, if it is advertised, if it is above 60 Hz in refresh rate, you come into here, you make sure that if it is a high refresh rate monitor, you have your DisplayPort cable attached to your graphics card. It's different than having a HDMI. Your DisplayPort cable looks kind of like that. It's kind of like a rectangle with a corner cut off of it. Okay? DisplayPort is an entirely different thing. and sometimes you have a lower quality DisplayPort cable. It's recommended that you have different DisplayPort cables of higher caliber. Sometimes you come with one with a nice monitor, or maybe you want to upgrade to a DisplayPort 2.1. You can do more research on that. You can buy one. It's like any cable. It's not going to be super expensive. Just make sure you get what you know where you're getting. Okay? Refresh rate. You just click on this. You change the one. You set it. And then you hit apply. Okay? Don't worry about these color settings too much. It's whatever. Make sure you enter your native resolution. Okay? At that point, if you have G-Sync, if G-Sync is a thing for you, if you have a monitor that you bought with G-Sync enableable, turn that off. If you're playing Overwatch, if you're playing any other game that is single player, you can turn it on. It's pretty nice. It makes it super smooth. It's really nice. It introduces a little bit of input latency, but not that much. It's not like vertical sync. Don't listen to what people say. It's okay. Alright? It's just not good for competitive games. That's all. Don't use it on competitive games unless you have a god PC that can run Overwatch at 300 frames. If you spent more than $3,000 on your computer, you can probably run G-Sync. Even though you probably don't want to. If you're comfortable on it and it works for you, it's okay. I know a couple streamers that do it, maybe like one, but he also has a god PC. That's the reason why he does it. So if you don't have a god PC, don't do it. Don't use that. Okay? Are we good? Okay. So here, you want to go down the list, general, speech, all this stuff. You want to go to location, turn location off, turn all these things off, all your default programs. You want to look at camera, I mean, if you have a webcam, whatever. Microphone, you want to leave this on. So Windows can access and activate your microphone. Want to go to notifications, make sure it can't annoy you. Just go down this list and only use things that make sense to you. You're going to see here that I have everything turned off. All this stuff. All the calculated. Who needs all this stuff? You don't need this stuff. Look at all this. This is bloatware. This is what we call bloatware. This stuff is going to slow down your computer in the background, and it's not going to let you game like you need to. It's just you don't need a lot of it. So make sure documents and stuff. Like, you can install things, Windows Defender, you want it to be able to look at things. Pictures, allow yourself to look at pictures. Turn off Cortana. Turn off Cortana, you don't need Cortana. Xbox, you don't need that shit. Microsoft, you don't need it. Paint, just whatever. You don't need it. Feedback Hub, screw you, we don't need you. Videos, yeah, you want to access your videos. You want to access your VDAs. Okay? Are we good? We're good. You just learned basically how to optimize your shit. Now, there's another thing you need to do. We'll go back there again. You're going to go to your little option at the gear. We're going to go to power options. Okay? Actually, we're just going to go to power because that's different. Edit power plan. Okay? Go to edit power plan. Now. Oh my gosh. Can't believe it did that. Okay. See this? Turn off display? Never. Put the computer to sleep? Never. You never want your PC to go to sleep. That's stupid. You're trying to use it, and when it sleeps, it actually messes up stuff. It's a problem with Windows, not an issue with your hardware. Sometimes when you put when you put the computer to sleep and you start it up, not everything runs at proper stuff. Sometimes Windows just messes up. It's technology, it just happens. So you're gonna go to here, advanced power settings. Okay? You're going to go in here and choose high performance active power plan. You're going to look here at hard disk. Turn off hard disk after. Never. You never want to turn off your hard disk. You want to come down a little bit. Okay? You want to go to sleep. Alright? Sleep after, never. Allow hybrid sleep on. That's okay. Hibernate after, never. Allow wake timers, yes. If your PC ever did sleep, you want wake timers on. Then you're going to go to PCI Express, link state power management. Make sure this is off. This will cause power fluctuations, and it's going to make your game perform less so. But this usually turns off when you turn on maximum performance. Just make sure this is off anyway. Processor power management. Minimum processor state, 100%. Maximum processor state, 100%. Make sure those are on. System cooling policy, active. Don't change that, I promise you. Don't change your cooling. You will destroy your computer. Enable this stuff you don't need to worry about anymore. Just click OK. Make sure you just do all this, okay? And basically, your computer's going to be ready to go at this point. You've done everything you need to do. You've done everything you need to do. Basically, you're fine, okay? What are some other things that you might want to do? Okay, there's overclocking, there's clocking, there's loading a file. There will be a file. There are usually preset overclocking files on your motherboard, and before you think about overclocking being a scary thing, it's very hard to destroy your computer. And usually using an auto overclocker will not harm you. Using a preference setter with your motherboard will not harm you. It will not. Asus motherboards, for example, and many others have an XMP file. It is a loadable file that you can load on your computer, and that's in your BIOS. The XMP file is for your memory. Usually when you buy RAM, assuming you bought nice RAM, dual channel RAM, which is 2 sticks of RAM plugged into 2 different slots, your A slot and your C slot, or your B slot and your D slot, is you're going to want to make sure the RAM profile is turned up. The reason you want this is because when you buy computer parts and you buy something that is overclockable, it's going to say it's up to this speed, or it's going to say, 3200 megahertz, 4000 megahertz RAM. But usually manufacturers, they ship you something at a safe level. They basically ship you stuff at like 60% of its max potential. Okay? That's where they know it's going to function, they know it's going to run most games, they know it's going to do most things for you. Okay? It's going to do what it says it's going to do, but they ship it to you in a safe manner, where it's going to run less heat consumption, or power consumption, and it's going to run not as hot, it's going to be very safe to use, and it's going to be an area where you can play around with it. That is what overclocking means. It just means that the longevity of your system can last because you have dormant potential available in your system. That is why getting a K-rated processor, like an i5 6600K or an i7 7700K processor, is really good to have. Because that means you can push it beyond the previous potential. Okay, the previously thought potential of it. It has greater access. That way, when games start getting more advanced and they start releasing new processors, new hardware, new GPUs, you can compete with the competition. Overclocking just allows you to future-proof yourself and prepare for more upgrades. PC gaming is a commitment. It truly is. If you love it, and you're all about it, and you can afford it, or you want to work towards it, you can do all these things. And yes, I know the game is minimized, you can hear it in the background. It's very funny. But, excuse me, I'm gonna do a quick rundown, again, of everything you should be doing. Updating drivers, your BIOS, all your stuff, your operating system, the firmware of your mouse if it is not a plug-and-play mouse, your keyboard if it needs firmware, if it's not a plug-and-play keyboard. You can do all these things, and basically the overall lesson here is know what you have, know what your hardware is capable of, know what you're buying, and know who you're buying from. It's perfectly okay to actually go after all the esports rated stuff. If you have an esports favorite graphics card or esports favorite processor from Intel, if you have the hardware of the pros, the favorite mouse pad of esports, it's okay to buy them. Because when it comes to gaming, we're now to a point where if you're gonna buy something esports used, you know that it's not just buzzword. You know that they're not just trying to say they're the best out of all the competition. You're just getting something that is quality and is going to help you. Do not shill out for the Asus Gladius 2014 edition because it says it can have a 2000 polling rate mouse. That's a lie. There is no 2000 polling rate mouse. Do not buy into something that just tells you this and that. Do your research. It's not complicated. You can compare things, you can get Amazon discounts, you can do all this stuff. My biggest thing for anybody though, you want to make sure your BIOS are updated, especially before you go overclocking. Do not overclock without making sure your BIOS are up to date. Otherwise, you will not get the full potential out of your system, and older overclocks could have harmed systems. I'm sure it would have made headlines, but there's not going to be a headline on YouTube or Twitter about this motherboard destroyed this many CPUs because the BIOS were not calibrated correctly back in 2017 or 2016. There's nothing like that anywhere. This is just a common thing. Just know this. A lot of gamers know this. A lot of people are familiar with PC hardware. And that's really all there is to it. It took a good, probably 45 minutes. I don't know how long I took on this video, but hey, I'm trying to help you out. I want to make sure you're ready. So, there you go. This is all the stuff you need to know for your performance of your system, all the stuff you need to know about your computer in general, and Overwatch, and how it functions. Thank you for watching. I hope this helps you. I really do. Take care. Have a great day. Great night, whenever you watched it. I'm Kowalski, and it's been a pleasure to have you watching my content.